Hi, it's Jason here at Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Today I'm talking specifically to those people who've tried growing plants from cuttings but have racked up some failures. And I think you know what I mean here, when the cuttings have turned black from the base and rotted out or dried out on you, and it can be a little bit discouraging. Now what I'm going to suggest to you is that maybe you just haven't tried an easy enough plant yet. And at first this sounds like terrible advice. Why try something hard when you can try something easy? But I think it is exactly what brand new propagators need to hear at times, is that when you're trying to master the techniques themselves, it doesn't help if you're trying a difficult plant. You don't know whether to chalk up that failure to the fact that you've done something wrong, or the fact that you've just chosen a plant at the wrong time of year, or is particularly hard to propagate with. So what I'm going to suggest is that you start with those confidence builders, those plants that are easy to stick from cuttings, and I'm going to show you those plants in this video. I'm going to start with roses, and then I'm going to move on to some other shrubs and perennials that you'll have an easy time propagating with, and at the very end of the video I'll talk about some that maybe you shouldn't make your first attempt with, those that are difficult to propagate with. Starting with roses, because that's one of the main topics of my channel, this rose here is called Ballerina. It's a hybrid musk rose, and all of the hybrid musks tend to be pretty easy from cuttings. Can you believe that this is in such nice bloom this late into the year, now in the first week of October? So yeah, it wants to grow. It's producing lots of wood that's good for cuttings, and let me show you some of the results inside. Well, here's a full tray of Ballerina right up at the front of my propagation table, some flowers across the top, and you'll also note that we went ahead and labeled them straight away on the sides of the pot, just to avoid confusion later. Some other varieties you might expect some mixed results, but this one here, full success, full tray, beautiful white roots right from the get-go, nothing like that to make you feel happy about your success in the hobby. Let's have a look at this one here. This is Bonica, and yeah, I know it's pink and cluster flowering like Ballerina, but I just point out as an example of the Mélande landscape roses, Bonica, Alba Mélande, the red ones. They have a whole group of small landscape roses that actually do tend to come very easily from cuttings if you're looking for practice. And by the way, this variety is the one I did the milk jug propagation with last year, just to show that it can be done with very, very basic setup. And yeah, it's super easy that way. That's why I chose it. I wouldn't mind expanding that color range a little bit before I move on from roses. This is a rambler called Guillain de Félagond, which even this time of year is putting up some of its apricot blooms, and yes, it is dead easy from cuttings. Another one in the yellow range that you might consider is the Cordes climber called Leverkusen, which I find quite easy to stick. I'll put in a word for the mini roses. This one is called Ocarina, and it is putting up a gorgeous flush of blooms even this late into the season, and minis are good that way. They tend to bloom very regularly, giving you lots of material for cuttings, and as I say, in general they're very easy to root, so good confidence builder. Moving on to other garden shrubs, there's not much easier than willows. This time last year I stuck some 6 to 8 inch stems just directly into the ground, no rooting hormone, no attention at all, and just let them root out. And they're part of a project to cover up this stump, and as you can see, they've put on some size now. Very successful with no attention. Now granted, the colored stemmed willows aren't that exciting to everybody, but this is the Japanese pink flowering pussy willow called Mount Aso. Actually quite hard to find on the Canadian market at least. And look at that. 3 weeks ago, stuck these as a whim with no rooting hormone, and we have fine roots all the way to the bottom of the plug and nearly a 100% success rate. Our hydrangeas are mainly cycling through fall colors right now, although there might be a fresh bloom or two still out here. Both the macrophylla varieties, like the ones I just showed you, also the paniculata varieties, like this one here, Limelight, they're both very easy from cuttings. Here's 3 kinds of hydrangeas that we've potted from cuttings we took late this summer. This is the mop head style hydrangea, like the ones I showed you in that first clip. This is an oak leaf hydrangea, Snowflake, I showed that in a previous video, and then these over here are the paniculata type, like that Limelight. And I just wanted to show you, given that these were only potted a few weeks ago, how well they're doing. And you can see here it has good rooting right across the top end of the pot here, although it is not rooted enough to hold the soil down at the bottom of the pot yet. So some ways to go. Some other shrubs definitely worth a go if you have currants, gooseberries or their relatives jostaberries in your garden, they are very easy to root from cuttings. This one is a red flowering currant. It's very ornamental in the garden and also just takes super easy from cuttings. Really came out nicely. Tons of roots in the pot from potting about a month ago. This one here beside me is another shrub that people do find problematic in their gardens. It's called butterfly bush. So they do sometimes self-seed, but there are fertile and sterile varieties. But either which way, they root beautifully from cuttings, fast and easy. Nice to be successful with that. Now I will point out, as I move now from shrubs like these into perennials like these ones here, these are sedum. And sedum, I've done a whole other video on that and I will link that here, but sedums are a great way to cut your teeth on perennial propagation because they don't really need the humidity domes as much as most of the ones that I've talked about so far. They won't lose their moisture quickly, and so you can actually forego the humidity domes and just propagate them in open trays. Further into the perennials, I can't say enough about the perennial sages and their near relatives, all in the mint family. This one here is Salvia caradonna. I did a video on this earlier this year, and you can see I've got it in a 50 cell plug tray. It's rooting out the bottom, and every cell is filled. And the really cool part is that once you've mastered one, you really have mastered all its cousins too, like lavender on the far left here. I have a video on that one specifically, which I'll link here as well, but it's the same method for all of them. Next to that is Perovskia, or Russian sage. Beautifully fragrant leaves, sort of lemon scented and very tough and hardy. In the third position there is Agastaki, or hummingbird mint. And the last one over is catmint. So all of these sage and mint relatives are super easy. I mean, I could go on and on down the list. So the point is that if you master it, you get a wide range of plants that you can propagate from, and they're all the same method. Well, there's no lack of plants that seem to want to throw roots very quickly. Other ones are slow or difficult. Actually, that can be the same thing when it comes to propagation. Slow is difficult. What you want to see is fast validation of your efforts. So something like boxwood would not jump to the front of the list for me. It took me a long time to root these, the better part of a cool season to get them rooted. And even now, they're quite slow in the pot. So not for fast results on that. And to that end, I would also say that everything in the heather family, in this case, I'm talking about the rhododendrons, the azaleas, blueberries, pyrrhus. I've found them to be slow and difficult in terms of success rate. So maybe not for beginners, maybe that's a project for down the road. Also, I'm going to show you some conifers on this table over here, and while some of them are showing some signs of rooting and even decent roots, it's taken the better part of a year to get them there. And if I give you a scan over the trays, you're also going to find that there are lots of empty spaces there for ones that have failed in the past and are still failing. Thanks for joining me on this video for easy plants to grow from cuttings. What I think and hope you will find is that if you look down into the comments, there will be lots of people willing to jump in and tell you which plants they've had a very easy time with, perennials, shrubs, even annuals, of course, which are super easy to get started with. Now, as to the time of year, and I'm offering this to you in the first week of October, and depending on where you are, you may be heading into the winter time. And as I said in maybe last video or 2 videos ago, what that means is that if you have some success, you may have to overwinter these plants indoors, but I have no trouble recommending that. It's a great way to get the experience right now, and then as you go into the fresh gardening season where there's lots more cuttings to choose from and you have a longer season to overwinter, then by then you've built your confidence, you've built your skills, and you go into the new season ready. So that's my recommendation to you. All right, if you have any questions, please drop them into the comments below the video. I'll see what I can do to help.